Commander Ji-woo Park stood at the viewport of the transport ship, watching as the massive diplomatic station grew larger. The structure gleamed like a silver wheel against the backdrop of stars, rotating slowly to provide artificial gravity for its many inhabitants. This would be her home for the next 2 years as Earth's representative to the newly formed Galactic Coalition. Final approach to Harmony Station. Please secure all belongings, announced the ship's eye. Ji-woo straightened her navy blue uniform and checked her reflection in the polished surface of the viewport. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression was composed despite the butterflies in her stomach. This was humanity's first major step into galactic politics, and she couldn't afford to make mistakes. The docking procedure went smoothly. Ji-woo stepped through the airlock and was greeted by a tall, green-skinned protocol officer. Commander Park of Earth, welcome to Harmony Station. I am Officer Donk. The introductory reception begins in 1 hour in the Grand Assembly. Your quarters are in Section E, Room 217. Ji-woo nodded. Thank you. I look forward to meeting the other representatives. Her quarters were small but comfortable, with a bed, desk, and a small food preparation area. The walls were a soothing pale blue, and a large screen displayed a view of Earth as seen from lunar orbit. Ji-woo quickly unpacked her few personal items and changed into her formal diplomatic uniform. The Grand Assembly was a circular chamber with a high domed ceiling. Already, the room buzzed with activity. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors mingled, their various translators creating a background hum of electronic chirps and whirs. Ji-woo took a deep breath and stepped into the crowd. She had studied all available information on the 23 species in the coalition, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. A group of tall, thin beings with 4 arms conversed with floating jellyfish-like creatures. In another corner, reptilian diplomats with scales that shifted colors exchanged data crystals. First time among the stars? Asked a friendly voice. Ji-woo turned to see a small creature looking up at her. It stood about 1 meter tall, covered in soft blue fur with delicate, transparent wings that occasionally fluttered. Its face was pointed, with large, round eyes that blinked curiously and long, tufted ears that twitched with excitement. Is it that obvious? Ji-woo asked, smiling despite herself. The creature made a trilling sound that Ji-woo realized was laughter. All newcomers have the same look, like they're trying to remember too much information at once. The creature extended a paw-like hand. I am Mickey, Junior Ambassador from the Plorine Collective. Ji-woo shook the soft paw gently. Commander Ji-woo Park, representing Earth. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ambassador Mickey. Just Mickey, please. We Plorine don't stand on ceremony like the Veldarians. Mickey gestured toward the 4-armed beings. Come, let me introduce you to some of the friendlier delegates before the formal proceedings begin. Over the next hour, Mickey led Ji-woo through the crowd, making introductions. The small alien seemed to know everyone and had a knack for diplomatic small talk. Ji-woo was grateful for the guidance, though she struggled to remember all the names and species. The formal welcoming ceremony began with speeches from the founding members of the coalition. Ji-woo listened attentively, noting the political undercurrents and alliances that were already forming. After the ceremony, the gathering shifted to a more relaxed reception. Food and drink from various worlds were served, with clear labels indicating which species could safely consume which items. Ji-woo selected a plate of what appeared to be Earth-safe appetizers and found a quiet corner to observe the room. Mickey appeared beside her, carrying a cup of glowing blue liquid. You're very quiet for a human, Mickey said. The reports we received suggested your species was quite talkative. Ji-woo smiled. We're a diverse species. Some of us talk more than others. Fascinating, Mickey said, taking a sip of the glowing drink. Oh, my apologies. My translator seems to be. The device at Mickey's throat emitted a high-pitched whine, then fell silent. Mickey tapped it several times, ears flattening in frustration. When it didn't respond, the alien shrugged apologetically and spoke in a musical language full of trills and chirps. Ji-woo gestured to her own translator. "May I?" When Mickey nodded, she examined the small device. "It looks like it just needs a reset." She pressed a recessed button on the side, and the translator hummed back to life. "Thank you," Mickey said, clearly relieved. How embarrassing. Technology fails at the worst moments. "It happens to everyone," Ji-woo assured her. Mickey's large eyes studied Ji-woo curiously. "Since you helped me, I'll share some valuable information with you. The Veldarians appear friendly, but they consider humans to be politically naive. And the Traxai, those reptilians by the fountain, they respect strength above all, never show weakness around them." Ji-woo was surprised by the direct advice. "Thank you. That's very helpful. We Plorine believe in direct communication," Mickey explained, wings fluttering slightly. "May I ask you a personal question?" "Of course," Ji-woo replied, curious. "Is it true that humans can form pair bonds at any time of your orbital cycle?" The question caught Ji-woo off guard. "Yes, that's correct. We don't have specific times for finding partners." Mickey's eyes widened dramatically. "And you can reproduce without seasonal cues?" "Well, yes," Ji-woo said, feeling slightly awkward discussing human reproduction at a diplomatic function. Human fertility isn't tied to seasons. Mickey's fur puffed out in apparent shock. The small alien stared at Ji-woo for a long moment, then exclaimed in a voice much louder than intended, "Wait, you don't have a mating season." The conversation around them immediately quieted. Delegates from multiple species turned to stare at Ji-woo and Mickey. Some looked curious, others seemed scandalized, and a few appeared amused. Ji-woo felt her face grow warm with embarrassment. This was not how she had planned to make her diplomatic debut. Mickey's ears drooped. "I've caused a scene. I'm so sorry. It's just that among Plorine, our entire society revolves around the annual mating season. The idea of a species without one is just..." The alien trailed off, clearly at a loss for words. To Ji-woo's surprise, several other delegates moved closer, their own translators buzzing with activity. "Is this true about humans?" asked a tall, elegant delegate with silver skin. Before Ji-woo could answer, she found herself surrounded by curious aliens, all with questions about human biology and relationships. What had begun as an embarrassing moment was quickly turning into an impromptu cultural exchange. As she carefully explained human reproduction and relationships to the fascinated audience, Ji-woo caught Mickey's eye. The small alien gave her an apologetic but encouraging smile. Perhaps this wasn't such a diplomatic disaster after all. The news of humanity's unusual reproductive biology spread through Harmony Station faster than a quantum transmission. By the following morning, Ji-woo found herself the subject of intense curiosity. As she entered the station's common dining area, conversations paused briefly before resuming with increased energy. "There she is," whispered a voice, not quite quietly enough. Ji-woo selected a breakfast that resembled oatmeal and fruit from the Earth-compatible food station. She spotted Mickey waving enthusiastically from a table near the large viewport that showed the slowly rotating stars outside. "I saved you a seat," the small blue alien called out, "and I must apologize again for yesterday's incident." Ji-woo sat down and smiled. "It's fine, really. Cultural misunderstandings are bound to happen." Still, discussing reproductive cycles at a formal reception, Mickey's ears drooped slightly. "My supervisor was not pleased." "Your supervisor should join us." Then, Ji-woo said, "The more we all learn about each other, the fewer misunderstandings we'll have." Mickey brightened immediately. What an excellent idea. In fact, the alien looked around the room. It seems many delegates are curious about humans. Indeed, Ji-woo noticed several beings glancing their way with poorly disguised interest. Some were even edging closer to their table. "Perhaps we could host an informal cultural exchange," Ji-woo suggested. "Not just about human reproduction, but about how different species handle relationships and family structures. Mickey's wings fluttered with excitement. Yes, the Harmony Lounge would be perfect. It's designed for casual gatherings. By midday, word had spread about the impromptu cultural exchange. Ji-woo arrived at the Harmony Lounge that evening to find it already crowded with delegates from at least a dozen different species. The room had comfortable seating arranged in a circle, with soft lighting and a relaxed atmosphere. Mickey bounded over, accompanied by an older Plorine with silver-tipped blue fur. Ji-woo, this is Tae-ho, my senior ambassador. Tai-ho bowed politely. Commander Park, thank you for agreeing to this exchange. I hope my junior diplomat's enthusiasm hasn't put you in an awkward position. Not at all, Jae-woo assured him. I think it's important we understand each other beyond just political positions. The gathering began casually, with species introducing their basic biology and social structures. Ji-woo learned that the jellyfish-like Medusan species had 5 distinct sexes, all necessary for reproduction. The reptilian Traxae laid eggs only during specific astronomical alignments that occurred once every 9 years. When it was Ji-woo's turn to speak, she explained human reproduction and relationship practices as simply and clinically as possible. The room grew increasingly quiet as she spoke, with many delegates leaning forward in fascination. So humans can form pair bonds based on emotional attachment rather than biological imperative? Asked a crystalline being whose voice chimed like bells. Yes, Ji-woo confirmed. While hormones play a role in attraction, we choose partners based on compatibility, shared values, and emotional connection. And these connections can form at any time. Tae-ho asked, his silver-tipped ears twitching with interest. Any time throughout our adult lives, Ji-woo explained. Some humans form lifelong partnerships, others have multiple partners over time, and some choose not to pair at all. A murmur ran through the room. The concept seemed revolutionary to many species present. But how does your society function without the structure of a mating season? Mickey asked, genuinely puzzled. For Plorine, everything revolves around our annual cycle. Government positions change, work assignments shift, even our homes are reorganized. Wait, Ji-woo said, surprised. Your entire society reorganizes during mating season. Tai-ho nodded solemnly. The time of choosing lasts 30 days by your Earth calendar. All normal functions pause. When it ends, many Plorine have new mates, new jobs, sometimes even new home territories. It keeps our society dynamic and prevents stagnation. That's fascinating, Ji-woo said sincerely. Humans maintain relatively stable social structures year-round, with changes happening gradually through individual choices rather than collective shifts. The cultural exchange continued well into the station's night cycle. Ji-woo learned that some species had complex mating rituals lasting months, while others reproduced through methods that barely resembled Earth biology at all. Over the next few weeks, Ji-woo found herself becoming the unofficial human representative for alien curiosity. Mickey often accompanied her through the station, asking increasingly detailed questions about human relationships. So humans can experience romantic attraction without it being mating season? Mickey asked as they walked through the hydroponics garden, a popular relaxation spot on the station. That's right, Ji-woo said, pausing to admire a flowering plant that resembled an orchid. We experience attraction based on individual preferences rather than biological timing. That sounds both wonderful and terrifying, Mickey admitted. To never know when such feelings might appear, to have no predictable cycle to prepare for. Ji-woo considered this. I suppose it can be unpredictable. But there's something beautiful about connections that form organically, don't you think? Mickey's fur shifted slightly, taking on a more vibrant blue hue. Perhaps, though I cannot imagine how your species makes any plans with such uncertainty. Later that week, Ji-woo was invited to observe a Plorine planning session. The large meeting room was filled with holograms showing complex schedules and rotations. This is our preparation for the upcoming time of choosing, Taiho explained. Every Plorian diplomat will be affected, so we must arrange coverage for all essential functions. Jiagu studied the charts with growing amazement. Your entire diplomatic corps changes during mating season. Not completely, Taiho said. About 60% of positions will shift. The remaining 40% provides continuity. I myself have held my position through 3 seasons, which is unusual. And this happens with all professions. Doctors, engineers, leaders. All of them, Mickey confirmed. It's how we ensure fresh perspectives in every field. No one becomes too comfortable or set in their ways. As the days passed, Ji Wu began to see the beauty in the Plorian system, even as they expressed admiration for human adaptability. Other species joined these discussions, each sharing their own approaches to balancing biological imperatives with social needs. One evening, as Ji Wu and Mickey watched the stars from the observation deck, the small alien turned to her with serious eyes. "I've been thinking about what you said about organic connections," Mickey said quietly. "Before meeting humans, I never questioned our biological cycles, but now I wonder if there's wisdom in your way too." Ji Wu smiled. "I think each approach has its strengths. Your society embraces change in ways humans often resist." Mickey's wings fluttered gently. "Perhaps that's why the galaxy needs all our species working together. Our differences create balance." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching distant stars, Ji Wu realized that what had begun as an embarrassing cultural misunderstanding had become something much more valuable. A true exchange of ideas that was already reshaping how both their species viewed the universe. The emergency alarm blared through Harmony Station, its harsh tone cutting through the usual peaceful hum of systems. Ji Wu jolted awake, checking the time display beside her bed. 300 hours, station time. She quickly pulled on her uniform and hurried to the door. "Attention all diplomatic personnel," announced the station eye. "Emergency meeting in Central Chamber 1. Priority level. Urgent." The corridors were filled with confused delegates rushing toward the central section. Ji Wu spotted several human colleagues looking equally alarmed. Ambassador Hyun Ki, Earth's senior representative, motioned her over. "Any idea what's happening?" Ji Wu asked. Hyun Ki's expression was grim. "The Verax and Drell are threatening armed conflict over the Talus asteroid belt. Both claim mining rights." Ji Wu felt her stomach tighten. The Verax and Drell were known for their aggressive tendencies and impressive military capabilities. A conflict between them could quickly escalate beyond the asteroid belt. The central chamber was already crowded when they arrived. On one side stood the Verax delegation. Tall, muscular beings with ridged foreheads and gray skin that seemed to shimmer with metallic highlights. Across the room, the Drell representatives hissed quietly among themselves, their reptilian scales shifting between shades of red and orange in their agitated state. Station Director Quan took the central podium. "This emergency session is called to address the developing situation in the Talus sector. Both the Verax Dominion and Drell Confederation have moved military vessels into the region and are claiming exclusive rights." The Verax ambassador stepped forward, his voice deep and resonant. "The Talus belt has been in Verax territory for generations. The Drell incursion is a clear act of aggression." "Lies." The Drell representative's forked tongue flicked out in anger. "Our survey ships discovered the rich palladium deposits first. The Verax only showed interest after our initial findings." The chamber erupted into shouted arguments. Director Quan repeatedly called for order, but tensions only seemed to escalate. Ji Wu scanned the room, suddenly realizing something important. "Where are the Plorian mediators?" she whispered to Hyun Ki. The blue-furred aliens were known throughout the coalition for their exceptional mediation skills. Hyun Ki's expression darkened further. "Their mating season began yesterday. Most of their delegation is indisposed." Ji Wu remembered the planning charts she had seen in the Plorian offices. This explained why they had been preparing so meticulously for coverage during their time of choosing. But clearly, they hadn't anticipated a major crisis erupting at this particular moment. The arguments continued for hours, with various species attempting to propose compromises. Nothing seemed to work. The Verax demanded immediate Drell withdrawal, while the Drell insisted on shared mining access. Both sides reported more military vessels moving into position around the asteroid belt. By mid-morning, the situation had deteriorated further. The Verax ambassador was now openly threatening to protect their territory with force if necessary. "This is getting us nowhere," Director Quan finally said, calling a brief recess. "We reconvene in 2 hours. I expect cooler heads to prevail." Ji Woo slipped away from the heated discussions and headed to the observation deck, needing a moment of quiet to think. To her surprise, she found Mickey there, sitting alone on a bench before the vast viewport. The small alien's fur had changed to a deep purple color, and their wings drooped slightly. "Mickey, are you all right?" Ji Woo asked gently, sitting beside her friend. Mickey looked up, eyes unusually dim. "Ji Woo, I didn't expect to see any diplomats outside the emergency session. We're taking a short break before tensions explode completely," Ji Woo explained. "But why aren't you with the other Plorine? I thought during your time of choosing." Mickey's ears flattened against their head. "I'm a junior diplomat. This is my first season away from home." The small alien's voice trembled slightly. Unfrightened, "Ji Woo, the biological imperatives are strong, but I'm trying to maintain my duties. Others of my kind are fully engaged in the seasonal rituals." Ji Woo nodded in understanding. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "No, but thank you." Mickey gazed out at the stars. "I'm more worried about this conflict. Our timing couldn't be worse. The Plorine are the Coalition's primary mediators, and now most of us are unavailable just when we're needed most." Ji Woo sat quietly for a moment, thinking. An idea began to form in her mind. "Mickey, what if humans stepped in as mediators?" The Plorine looked surprised. "Humans? But you have so little experience with interspecies conflicts." "True," Ji Woo acknowledged. "But we have something else that might be valuable right now." "What's that?" "We don't have a mating season," Ji Woo said, the realization growing stronger. "We remain focused on our duties year-round. What if that's our strength? What we can offer the Coalition when other species are following their biological imperatives?" Mickey's eyes widened. "I never thought of it that way. Your reproductive peculiarity could actually be an advantage in situations like this." Ji Woo stood up with renewed purpose. "I need to speak with Ambassador Hyun-Ki before the session resumes." 20 minutes later, Ji Woo stood before the Earth delegation, explaining her idea. Hyun-Ki listened thoughtfully before nodding. "It's worth trying," he agreed. "Our species doesn't have the diplomatic history of the Plorine, but we're stable and consistent. We can at least keep negotiations going until more experienced mediators become available." When the emergency session reconvened, Hyun-Ki addressed the chamber. "The Earth delegation proposes a temporary joint administration of the Talus Belt. We offer our services as neutral mediators until a permanent solution can be negotiated." The Verax ambassador scoffed. "Humans, what experience do you have in such matters?" "Very little," Hyun-Ki admitted candidly. "But we offer something unique: consistency. While other species manage their biological cycles, humans remain focused. We have no agenda in the Talus sector. We seek only to prevent conflict." To Ji Woo's surprise, the Drell representative scales shifted to a more neutral green. The human proposal has merit. Their species is new to the Coalition, with no historical alliances or grievances. The discussions continued for hours more, but with a different tone. The human delegation, working with Mickey, and the few Plorines still able to participate, proposed a temporary solution: a joint mining operation with equal profit sharing, administered by neutral parties until a permanent agreement could be reached. By station nightfall, both the Verax and Drell had tentatively agreed to withdraw their military vessels and consider the proposal. It wasn't peace, but it was a step back from the brink of war. As Ji-woo finally returned to her quarters, exhausted after nearly 20 hours of negotiations, she found a message from Mickey on her communication panel. "Today I saw how what makes humans different makes you valuable. Perhaps what seemed strange about your species is actually your greatest strength. Rest well, my friend. The Coalition needs you now more than ever." Ji-woo smiled tiredly. What had begun as an awkward conversation about human reproduction had somehow led to a new understanding of humanity's place in the galactic community. Sometimes, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, the things that make us different are exactly what make us essential. 6 months had passed since the Talus asteroid belt crisis, and Harmony Station had settled into a new rhythm. The Interspecies Continuity Court, initially created as a temporary solution, had become an essential part of the Galactic Coalition structure. Ji-woo stood before the mirror in her new quarters, adjusting the silver pins on her blue uniform. Today marked the official inauguration of the Corps as a permanent diplomatic branch, and as its newly confirmed director, she would address representatives from all 23 member species. A soft chime at her door announced a visitor. "Enter," she called. Mickey bounded in, wings shimmering with excitement. The small blue alien wore formal Plorine attire, a vest made of intricately woven iridescent material that complemented their fur. "Today's the big day," Mickey exclaimed. "Are you nervous?" Ji-woo smiled. "A little. 6 months ago, I was just trying to avoid embarrassing Earth at diplomatic functions. Now I'm leading an entirely new branch of the Coalition. A branch that exists because of your species' unique biology," Mickey reminded her. "Who would have thought your lack of mating season would become so valuable?" They walked together through the corridors of Harmony Station toward the Grand Assembly. The station had expanded over the past months, with new sections added to accommodate the growing diplomatic community. The Continuity Corps now occupied an entire wing, staffed by humans and members of other species whose biological cycles allowed for consistent service. "Director Kwon asked me to give you this," Mickey said, handing Ji-woo a small data crystal. "Final attendance numbers for today's ceremony." Ji-woo inserted the crystal into her handheld device and scrolled through the information. Every member species is sending representatives. Even the Verax and Drell will be seated at the same table. "A minor miracle," Mickey agreed. "Their joint mining operation is apparently quite successful. Another victory for your corps." They arrived at the Grand Assembly to find it already filling with delegates. The circular chamber had been decorated with the symbols of all Coalition species, arranged in a harmonious pattern across the domed ceiling. At the center stood a new emblem, a stylized representation of diverse biological cycles intertwining around a stable core. "That's the new Corps insignia," Ji-woo explained, noticing Mickey studying it. "It represents how different species cycles complement each other, with the stable elements supporting the whole structure during transitions." "Very appropriate," Mickey said approvingly. "Though I noticed the stable core looks suspiciously human-shaped." Ji-woo laughed. "Pure coincidence, I'm sure." As they made their way to the front of the chamber, delegates nodded respectfully or offered congratulations. Ji-woo was still getting used to her new status. Just 6 months ago, she had been a junior diplomat, and now species that had been traveling the stars for centuries treated her as an equal. The ceremony began with Director Kwon's opening remarks, followed by statements from founding Coalition members. When it was Ji-woo's turn to speak, she approached the podium with measured steps, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice clear and steady. "1 year ago, I arrived at this station as Earth's newest diplomat. During my first official reception, I learned an important lesson about cultural differences when my friend Mickey was shocked to discover humans don't have a mating season." A ripple of amused trills, clicks, and hums moved through the audience. Many remembered the incident that had sparked countless discussions throughout the station. What seemed at first like an awkward cultural misunderstanding revealed something important. Ji-woo continued. Each of our species has evolved unique biological rhythms and imperatives. These differences once kept us separate, but now they have become our collective strength. She gestured to the diverse gathering before her. The Plorine's seasonal cycle gives them unparalleled insight into patterns and changes. The Verax's heightened sensory awareness during their dormant phase makes them exceptional security consultants. The Drell's biennial molting period grants them a unique perspective on transformation and renewal. And humans, with our lack of pronounced biological cycles, can provide continuity when others must focus on their essential biological needs. Jiwu paused, looking around the chamber. The interspecies continuity course is not about highlighting human exceptionalism. It's about recognizing that our differences create a natural system of support. When one species must attend to biological imperatives, others step forward. This is the true meaning of coalition, not just working together, but supporting each other through our natural cycles. The speech continued for several more minutes, outlining the Corps' achievements during its provisional period and its goals for the future. When Jiwu finished, the chamber filled with the diverse sounds of approval from 23 different species. After the ceremony, a reception was held in the station's central garden. Jiwu moved among the delegates, accepting congratulations and discussing future collaborations. Mickey remained close by, now serving as the official Plorian liaison to the Continuity Corps. Director Park called a melodious voice. Jiwu turned to see a tall, willowy being with translucent skin approaching. She recognized the delegate as a member of the Lunari, one of the Coalition's newest species. Ambassador Sorrel. Jiwu greeted them. "I'm pleased you could attend." "The pleasure is mine," the Lunari said, bowing slightly. "I have been studying your species since joining the Coalition, and I find myself curious about something." Jiwu nodded encouragingly. "Please, ask anything." "I understand that humans can form pair bonds and reproduce without seasonal cycles," Sorrel said. "But how do you decide when to mate? What signals the appropriate time without biological imperatives?" Before Jiwu could answer, she noticed Mickey dramatically covering their auditory receptors with their paws, eyes wide with exaggerated alarm. The gesture was so reminiscent of their first meeting that Jiwu couldn't help laughing. "Is something amusing?" the Lunari asked, confused. "Just a private joke between friends," Jiwu explained. "Your question is perfectly reasonable. Ambassador, perhaps we could discuss human relationship patterns over tea sometime. It's quite a complex topic." After the Lunari moved on, Mickey uncovered their ears, eyes twinkling with mischief. "Some things never change. A year in space, and aliens are still fascinated by human reproduction." "At least now I have prepared answers," Jiwu said with a smile. "And I don't blush quite so much." As the reception continued around them, Jiwu took a moment to look out the garden's viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its orbit, unaware that its species' lack of mating season had become its most valuable contribution to galactic diplomacy. "What are you thinking about?" Mickey asked, following her gaze. "How strange life is," Jiwu replied. One embarrassing question at a diplomatic reception changed everything. For me, for humanity, even for the Coalition. "The universe works in mysterious patterns," Mickey agreed, wings fluttering gently. "Speaking of which, the next Plorian time of choosing begins in 3 months. The Corps will be handling our diplomatic duties again." Jiwu nodded. "We'll be ready. And when the humans need support, I know the Plorian will be there for us too." "Always," Mickey promised. "That's what friends do, and what Coalition partners do even better." As new delegates approached with more questions and congratulations, Jiwu reflected on how far they had all come. What had begun with surprise and embarrassment had evolved into understanding and partnership. In the vastness of space, their differences weren't obstacles. They were the very foundation of their strength.